John T's disappearance from Salvage Hunters came without warning. One moment, he was a constant presence on the show, and the next, he was gone. For more than 11 years, viewers had grown used to seeing him on screen, making his sudden absence all the more noticeable. What initially seemed like a quiet exit was, in reality, the result of a series of events that had been unfolding behind closed doors, events that were never publicly explained at the time. His departure was not a short break or a temporary pause. John T made a clean and permanent exit from the program he had helped build from the ground up. Once considered an essential counterpart to Drew Pritchard, he was widely seen as irreplaceable. Drew was often described as someone who worked like two people at once, and together they formed a partnership many compared to a classic double act. Their chemistry appeared effortless, and the show's success grew rapidly because of it. Behind the scenes, John T was the backbone of the operation. He joined nearly every trip, managed the demanding pace of production, and handled much of the unseen labor without drawing attention to himself. However, during his final year on the show, cracks began to appear. Control over the program's direction slowly shifted to new producers, and with that shift came changes that directly affected T. His screen time decreased, his role became less defined, and he was no longer presented as Drew's primary partner. Instead, he was increasingly grouped in with the wider crew, a move that left him feeling pushed aside. Those professional frustrations were only part of the story. More sensitive personal issues were also developing away from the cameras. Near the end of his time on the show, John T began spending more time off-camera with Drew Pritchard. They worked closely together on inventory checks and deliveries, and their growing closeness soon became a delicate subject within the company. Rebecca, Drew Pritchard's ex-wife, still maintained a professional relationship with him, which made the situation even more complicated. The tension this created did not go unnoticed by the rest of the crew. As the situation worsened, John T found himself excluded from trips that Drew attended. According to an insider, the two were kept apart for nearly 3 months. Around that same period, a new assistant was brought in to work directly with Drew. To T, this felt like a quiet attempt to phase him out of the show. He began declining to appear in certain scheduled scenes, often blaming car trouble or exhaustion. However, staff members later stated that his vehicle was in working order and that he appeared healthy when leaving the set. The distance between Drew and John T continued to grow. They stopped sharing meals during filming days, and their on-camera interactions became brief and minimal. Toward the end of the season, John T was assigned solo scenes without Drew, something that had never happened before. One longtime colleague recalled a heated exchange between the two that lasted almost an hour. Although the conversation was never recorded, John T left the set early that day and did not return for the next 3 days. That moment marked a turning point. Early that summer, the final decision was made. During an internal meeting, John T was removed from the lineup for the upcoming season. Not long after, he exited the production group chat, returned his studio access pass, and cleared out his personal belongings from the truck he had used for years. Viewers were not informed immediately. Instead, the show's producer, Quest TV, released a brief video weeks later that offered no clear explanation. In it, John T simply thanked viewers and ended with a light-hearted remark, masking the seriousness of what had occurred. Later, Drew Pritchard addressed the situation on social media, stating that John T had chosen to follow his own path and that everything was fine. But that statement did little to hide the reality. This was not a sudden or impulsive decision. It was the result of ongoing personal and professional conflicts that had been building for a long time. The split reshaped the show and marked a major turning point in John T's life. To understand why John T committed so deeply to Salvage Hunters, and why he ultimately walked away, it helps to look back at where he came from. He was born and raised in northern England in a family with no ties to television or the antiques trade. His father worked in mechanical repairs, and his mother ran a small local shop. From an early age, John T became comfortable with tools, machinery, and physical labor, learning how to work with metal and heavy equipment. At 17, after leaving school, he trained as a heavy truck driver and began transporting goods across the region. He worked for companies that dismantled old furniture and cleared industrial sites, gaining first-hand knowledge of large structures like steel columns, machinery tables, and iron fixtures. Over time, he developed a sharp instinct for identifying what had value and what did not, skills that would later define his career. In the late 2000s, John T. met Drew Pritchard through a furniture deal. Drew was expanding his antiques business and needed someone capable of moving heavy items from difficult locations. John T.'s experience made him the perfect fit. At first, their arrangement was straightforward. Drew sourced the items, and John T. handled the transport. But as trust grew, Drew increasingly relied on T.'s judgment before making purchases. John T. understood the risks involved in moving certain items and was not afraid to say no when something couldn't be transported safely. That partnership would go on to define an era of salvage hunters, until it didn't. Pritchard understood and respected this approach, and over time, the two began traveling together more regularly. When Salvage Hunters was introduced on Quest, Drew was positioned as the lead personality, while T joined the show as a supporting presence. At the beginning, T was reluctant to appear on camera. He had no experience in television and saw no real purpose in being filmed. Despite this, the production team quickly noticed that T's calm, sincere, and grounded reactions worked as a natural counterweight to Drew's assertive negotiating style. Eventually, T agreed to appear on screen, but only on the condition that his manner of speaking and behavior would not be altered. He had no television training and never acted. What viewers saw was simply who he was. During filming, T focused entirely on logistics and responsibility. He checked items, organized transport, assessed vehicle size, and planned routes. He paid no attention to the camera and made no effort to perform or impress. Over time, this straightforward attitude became a core part of the show's identity. His ability to remain composed under pressure was especially evident in unexpected situations. On one occasion, a landslide left the entire crew stranded on the road, and T was the one who devised a temporary solution to protect the goods. When the vehicle developed mechanical issues, he repaired it immediately to avoid delays to the filming schedule. These moments were rarely shown on screen, yet they were essential to keeping the production running smoothly. Television exposure never altered John T's lifestyle. After each shoot, he drove himself home, maintained his own truck, and deliberately avoided additional activities such as press conferences, public appearances, or media interviews. He declined at least 3 invitations to appear as a television guest, explaining clearly that he did not want to change his original role simply to enhance someone else's image. His partnership with Drew did not begin on television but on the job, built on shared values of transparency and professional clarity. That foundation sustained their working relationship for nearly a decade before circumstances began to change. After many years working behind the scenes, T became a vital on-camera presence while remaining faithful to his established role. As the show expanded, however, that role slowly shifted. Responsibilities he had once actively handled were no longer prioritized, marking a departure from what he had originally agreed to. This gradual change ultimately led him to consider leaving, a decision that would later give rise to the Quiet Forge. Following his departure from Salvage Hunters, John T completely withdrew from public exposure. He has not appeared on any media platforms and does not use personal social media. The only confirmed detail is that he relocated to a coastal area far from the show's usual filming locations. There, he opened a small antique shop. Its name is simply displayed on a wooden board attached to the wall, the Quiet Forge. Inside, the modest space is filled with old industrial metalwork, workshop machinery, repair tools, and rare antique materials that often go unnoticed elsewhere. Unlike antique stores styled with luxury or nostalgia, this place resembles a working workshop. Everything is arranged by function. Large gears sit beneath steel shelving, iron frames rest against the walls, and tool cabinets are positioned throughout the space. Visitors often comment on how unexpectedly orderly it is, as though organized by someone deeply skilled in structure and efficiency. Most of his customers are craftsmen, architects, or interior designers searching for distinctive materials. T never presents himself as someone who was once on television. Every transaction focuses strictly on the item itself, its origin, condition, and price. To local residents, he is known as a quiet, detail-oriented shop owner who understands the value of every old screw. He does not import goods in large quantities. Instead, he personally travels to abandoned factories, old farms, and decommissioned processing plants. At times, he disappears for several days and returns with items few believed still existed. A nearby resident confirms that he works with natural skill, instinctively knowing what to do with anything he encounters. Although he once lived under constant cameras, T now follows a fixed routine. He opens the shop at 9 a.m. and closes at 5 p.m., takes Mondays off, and keeps the same schedule on weekends. He works entirely alone, employing no staff and relying on no assistants. He personally packages and delivers every order. Since leaving the show, he has not participated in any public events, declined invitations from antique fairs, and refused to sign agreements with media agencies. Those who know him understand that he has no interest in returning to fame. For him, everything became clear and sufficient the moment he stepped away from the camera. The Quiet Forge does very little advertising, yet it maintains a steady stream of customers through referrals. Some visitors come simply to seek advice on restoring old machinery. T does not sell additional services, but he is always willing to teach those who genuinely want to learn. His philosophy is simple: if something still works, it deserves to continue existing. As he once said, "Don't throw it away just because it's old." Though no longer on television, John T continues to live within his profession. He does not need public attention to prove his worth. While his current work brings no fame, it provides independence and security. This quiet life is not emptiness, it is a deliberate choice. From that decision, John T entered what may be the most important phase of his life, restoring his health after years of sacrifice. This journey did not need to be recorded, yet each step carried greater meaning than anything before. Weight loss and inner peace became priorities. Shortly after leaving his former work, T underwent a comprehensive medical examination. The results revealed a severely underactive thyroid, a condition that slowed his metabolism, reduced his ability to burn energy, and caused rapid weight gain despite no changes in diet. It also led to chronic fatigue, dizziness, and difficulty concentrating. Earlier on, T paid little attention to the health issues he was dealing with. His schedule was packed, and the constant pressure of travel kept him in a habit of putting things off. There was never time to slow down or address the problem properly. However, when work came to a halt, the warning signs became impossible to ignore. He realized he couldn't walk for more than 10 minutes without becoming short of breath, and his sleep quality had declined significantly. That moment pushed him to make a complete lifestyle change. Instead of relying on diet pills or fast solutions, he chose to begin with the most basic approach possible: daily walking. At first, it was only a few hundred meters around his neighborhood. Gradually, those short walks turned into several kilometers every morning. He stayed consistent for months, continuing regardless of rain, cold, or heat. Once walking became routine, he turned his attention to food. T removed packaged and processed products from his diet, reduced his carbohydrate intake, and committed to eating home-cooked meals. There was no personal chef and no trendy or extreme dieting involved. Every adjustment was guided by how his body reacted. As he started feeling lighter and sleeping better, he stuck with the same routine without pushing for additional changes. About 6 months in, visible results began to appear. His clothes fit more loosely, his posture and walk changed, and his endurance improved. Over the course of 18 months, he lost more than 30 kilograms without surgery or complicated medical assistance. The entire transformation happened quietly, with no public updates, photos, or online documentation. The first people to notice were his regular customers. One visitor who came in roughly once a month observed that each visit revealed a slightly neater version of T. More than that, he seemed noticeably more alert and talkative compared to when they first met. Beyond the physical changes, John T experienced a clear shift in mindset. Previously, he had been reserved, distant, and focused on working quietly in the background. After his health improved, he became more open with familiar customers, offering advice and sharing stories about restoring old items, things he rarely talked about in the past. For those watching from the outside, John T. succeeded in his own understated way. He didn't draw attention to himself, seek praise, or ask for recognition. He simply did what was necessary to improve his life, something he had postponed for far too long. His physical recovery did more than improve his health, it reset the rhythm of his entire life. He was no longer tied to filming schedules or constrained by television scripts. From that point forward, every decision followed a simple rule: live lighter, work within your limits, and focus on long-term balance. The physical transformation marked a crucial step in closing one chapter of his life and maintaining the next. The next part of the story is about reflecting on what he experienced and what he left behind after more than a decade connected to a program once followed across the country. It was a legacy built without applause. Throughout his time on the show, T was never presented as a lead or main character. Yet everyone on set understood that he was the person keeping everything running smoothly. Travel coordination, shipping, logistics, and shoot scheduling all carried his influence. Not everyone leaves a lasting impression after exiting a television show, but John T was an exception. As Salvage Hunters gained popularity, his presence became familiar to viewers. He spoke little and avoided the spotlight, yet his presence created a feeling of stability. He appeared when needed, handled tasks efficiently, and didn't rely on editing tricks or media attention to stand out. He was someone the audience instinctively trusted. Many of the people hired after his departure struggled with initiative. When John T was involved, tasks were completed on time and without complications. That reliability is why he was allowed to step beyond his official responsibilities. From organizing delivery trucks to inspecting items before purchase, his input carried real authority. A producer once confirmed that filming schedules were often adjusted around T, not because he asked for it, but because production stalled when he wasn't there. From the start of the program until his exit, his role was never fully replaced, even after a new assistant joined. T also played a role in shaping how the production team approached deals. Beyond shipping, he contributed to item evaluations. On several occasions, he identified an item's true value before Drew had made a buying decision. His ability to estimate came from experience, not theory or textbooks. One of his most lasting influences was the pacing of the show itself. While he was present, episodes felt steady, never rushed, yet never dragging. That rhythm reflected his own working style, calm, accurate, and straightforward. After he left, the episodes shifted noticeably. The structure felt uneven, the timing scattered, and the familiar tone disappeared. John T didn't make a loud exit, but his absence was clearly felt, and what he contributed to Salvage Hunters remains unforgettable. He was someone who stepped away at the right moment, chose to live correctly, and did what needed to be done. His story contains no scandal or dramatic climax, only clarity, discipline, and practical wisdom. If this journey resonates with you, consider clicking like to support thoughtful, non-sensational content. Share this video so more people can learn about someone who was once the quiet backbone of the entire show. If you have your own thoughts about John T, leave a comment below, we read every one. Subscribe to stay updated on future stories, and we'll see you next time.